What's good, agents? Welcome to the 15th episode of the Sideboard podcast. A lot of stuff to cover. It's another month, so, more card game shit going on. How is everybody doing?
Good, man. Yeah. 15th episode. Like I said, it's kind of crazy. We're out there. And yeah, there's a lot coming, I think, between last episode, this one, and then further things. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about. I'm excited.
I'm feeling really good. I hope you guys are been doing well as well. I feel like there's just been so many stuff on the release chart recently, and like we got so much stuff lined up, but it's just like we are fully into the cardboard season.
Yeah, I realize now with like Digimon coming out the weekend that we're recording this, and then the following weekend we have Dragon Ball. It feels like the Bandai games are starting to like come out with like within a couple weeks apart from each other, because I think One Punch Man for Union Arena just dropped too, very recently. Which I haven't even had time to think about about that set.
Yeah, it seems like in a good way. We always talk about having too many card games is always a good problem to have. But yeah, it does. It seems like I'm at a point where like I don't personally have like more stuff going on. My personal life has been the same, but it's like there's so much card game stuff to keep up with. I honestly just can't keep up with everything. I'm actually like kind of scaling down on some other card games to try to like put more like focus on like other ones like Agent said, like Union Arena I've been really deep diving into, and I haven't even looked into One Punch Man either. I like kind of just skirted right by the radar because like you said, Digimon, we have the global sync up is finally happening, so that's a huge thing. And then of course Dragon Ball Masters, one of my favorite games, coming out with its next set, and going into new block. We'll get into all that, but so yeah, I mean it's a lot going on.
Yeah, so many, and I feel like every time I'm looking at something, I'm bombarded by a spoiler from a game I'm actively playing. And it's like, and this is coming out, and this was announced. Like Final Fantasy and Spider-Man are all over my feed now. Like, and every time I look at a different card game, because I was looking at potentially doing a Union Arena deck, because we talked about getting one. Saitama would be funny. It sounds up my alley. I'm just gonna one-shot my opponents. But yeah, like you blink and forget about something, and something is already coming.
Yeah, it's nuts too, because like looking at Saitama and the fact that like the boss monster, I guess, hits for 7 damage it's like, what the hell? I do love with that game how they're really trying to stick to the themes of each set. So yeah, no, that's definitely something that I think we'll all kind of have to take a minute to go back and look at while we get situated, specifically Frolly and I with Digimon, because I know you just cracked your stuff. I'm literally in the process of cracking a case right now, and thankfully I'm not buying a case of Dragon Ball, so I can kind of breathe and build stuff next weekend.
Yeah, man, I've been having a lot of fun so far with the 2.5 launch. This felt like what the first special releases should have been like, with like the amount of rarity or like what you were getting, which I like. I like that's a step up. It's like, here's a couple box toppers, here's your lucky pack, and like having an extra secret in something is crazy. Where you can open a box and potentially get an extra secret. 2.0, it didn't feel like it mattered as much. Some on release were really good, and then you could get Satan mode for really cheap now. Currently. But if you look at this set, I'm like, oh, there's actual like other secrets of like having an extra Nene would not be bad if I need to put into multitude of decks. But I like that a lot of the archetypes look interesting, and they keep. This is the largest amount of, well, not just SPs, but additional case hits in any set. It's 13 for this one. So, like, there's the serialized cards. You have the Raised Omni. You have all the SPs from both sets, like the other half. There's so much going on in this set.
Yeah, man, I'm looking at this stack of cards to my right here because I'm building like 4 or 5 different decks that require either are purely from this set or require things from this set. And I'm like, I'm excited to go through and do that, but I'm like, damn, the cataloging of all this stuff and kind of putting it away and not just throwing it in a box somewhere. Yeah, it's gonna take a little while. Excited, but it's gonna take a little while for sure.
Yeah, and speaking as someone who I mean, I alluded to this last episode. Obviously, I've kind of taken a step back from Digimon because, you know, all these other games I'm trying, just pulling my attention all these different ways. But one thing I will say, and I feel like this is universal across all card games, where you guys are talking about, like, you know, this, we kind of knew this was going to happen with it anyways, right? With the, you know, global sync up and all that, and just having this massive release is like, it breathes like new life into the game, right? Not that the game was, you know, everybody talks about it, whatever. But it just kind of helps revitalize it. You know what I mean? You kind of, you know, every game gets stagnant over periods of time and this and that. And it's like here in this, it's like, it's hard for me even to not want to at least like explore it again, right? Because I was so big into Digimon and all that too. It's like, well, shoot, I want to see what's going on. I want to, you know, you get that FOMO and all that. So I think it's cool that, you know, whether or not if you're into it deep or just, you know, surface level, whatever, that like it does. I don't know what Bandai's master plan is across all the card games, but it just seems like they're just like, here you go, like just take it up. You know what I mean? So, so yeah, it's exciting to see, and it makes me wonder like, what are they going to do across all their slates? Because again, we got, you know, Gundam is still a couple months off, but you know they're going to have that. Union Arena's, you know, kicking up. Masters, I don't think is going anywhere soon. I don't really know what's going on with Fusion World. We talked about Fusion World a little bit, but I mean, it doesn't seem like it's, you know, doing too bad or whatever. And of course, Digimon. I feel like Digimon right now. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of seems like Digimon is almost at like their center just because of the global sync up. It kind of seems like Digimon has kind of grabbed Bandai's spotlight in terms of like their feature game, and I think the cool thing with that is like it fluctuates like over periods of months, right? Because like no one game. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I've still got like a couple of like collectible Digimon cards sitting on my desk and stuff, and I'm just like looking at them. I'm like, dang it! Like, am I really gonna like explore this again, or you know, whatever? So
it's cool to like only seeing the limited I have. Like, obviously we have like our big pre-releases coming soon. Weird because it was delayed, so is it even a pre-release? But you know, is what it is with production stuff now. But I found myself really like, and a weird thing about enjoying about this box is even though it's a really wide depth of like stuff you can get because it is 1.5 sets, it felt really cool to have future tech where we were like, oh, we have some 19 stuff. Like that wasn't supposed to be currently what we're doing. That's weird. But then afterwards, like getting this one, it felt like stuff was missing. Like I really enjoy the way they split this box now that I can like retroactively look at it where I'm like, okay, I like how they kind of like took this apart. And obviously it was just sequential, but like I think smartly how they were like, we're gonna keep all the Millennium Month stuff, Zed Millennium in one box. So if you're building that and you want all that stuff, you just dig there. We're not going to split over 2 boxes and screw people over. Like it feels like they've learned some lessons from some stuff, or someone put like more thought into it. This will be nothing anymore because, like Dan was saying, we have the global sync up. We're technically synced with them right now, so that's a really cool time to be. But I feel like a lot of eyes are on Digimon, whether or not you're actively in it. I feel like there's a lot of eyes.
Yeah, because it's so unique, right? Like, I can't think of another game where like the games were desynced and then now they're like going through the process of syncing them up. Like, I can't think of any card games that have done that historically. You guys let me know if you can think of any. So yeah, it's interesting too, because between this recording and the last one, Bandai axed a game. So, with Battle Spirits Saga being removed, what do you guys think that means, if anything? It may not mean anything for the rest of Bandai's family of games, because they're all doing very well, at least to my knowledge. And then we have Gundam on the horizon, which I guess just takes the slot for Battle Spirits, but gets to be successful. Sorry. What are you guys' thoughts on kind of like that whole situation?
I think with Battle Spirits, again, I could be wrong on this, but we've talked about this. Battle Spirits is actually still doing fairly well in Japan. So like the game itself is not dead like completely. It's just in the Western world, right? Like it never really took off. I mean, at least from my locals and like people I've talked to, Discord service and everything, it just wasn't really, it didn't really have the support behind it. And I don't know if that's one of those things where people want to always rag on Bandai. Oh, they didn't support this, they didn't do that. I don't know. For me, I didn't see the allure to the game. That's just a single perspective. I think in terms of how it relates to the other games, I think the reason why games like Digimon, Dragon Ball, Union Arena, with all the different IPs, because again, it's that encompasses everything, and of course Gundam on the horizon. It's like those IPs are so recognizable over here in the western part of the world versus like something like Battle Spirits Saga, that I don't think that I would hope anyways, I don't think it'll ever become an issue of those games ever really getting the axe, unless Bandai is just like, we don't want to continue printing, or we don't want to continue support for that game specifically. But I feel like the Battle Spirits was literally just a product of, there's not enough player turnout, so we're not going to continue pumping resources into that, especially when we have Gundam on the horizon, which they have to know that game's going to do really well over here. So that's what I think anyway.
That's fair. I think I have a slightly more pessimistic view, and less of like, it was the least popular game. It was the easiest hit. It was the only thing that wasn't printing money like everything else seems to be printing money. Why would we continue it in a market when we already have so many games over there? But I do feel like they could be on the horizon of having to sunset some stuff, only because like how much of this ecosystem can you have in? And we've talked very much, it seems like they're building their own card game web to fall in, where if you play this game, you start playing this other game. And web sounds treacherous, but that's not what I'm implying. I'm saying like they build a cool network where you're being able to test all these games, and they're making an environment where like, I'm going to the Niagara Regional. That's like a ways away, but like Dragon Ball is one day, Digimon is a different day. Like they clearly are trying to like plan their stuff. Like One Piece is like, I think it's a whole own thing, which is gonna be crazy. So there is part of me that does worry, where it's like, how popular does your game have to be just to make sure that it feels like a cool investment to get into, and not feel like I bought a box of something and it just sank. I think that was Urina's like fear a little bit, and it's kind of happened here where we don't have too many people playing. But if it's unsuccessful in some markets and not other markets, it just makes sense to put it down. But I do worry that it's like, is Digimon popular enough? Is my game popular enough? Is Master still cool and different enough? Like, yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at it, but I am hoping that it's just like, cool, this didn't work here, move it over.
Yeah, that's fair. I think you both bring up like really, really valuable points. I think for me, I'm kind of in a mix of both mindsets, because I think Battle Spirits, the big thing is, it's because it's like nobody knows what the hell Battle Spirits is, right? Like if I saw it on the shelf as a regular person, I don't even know what this is. The only reason I bought it, like the starter deck, is because it had a dope ass dragon starter deck, and I liked the artwork. And then I played the game and was like, no, but like the artwork was what made me interested initially. Gameplay left stuff to be desired for me, at least. But also, again, I think the big part is like, it's very, very niche, because it's like people outside of Japan who are playing the Japanese version of the game are the ones who seem to be evangelizing BSS, right? Like it's people who knew about the other version and whatever. And I guess it's in the same way with like Duel Masters, which I don't know if you guys remember that game back when we were kids. It still exists in Japan. I did not know this. It still exists. It still has anime. It's still like a big thing. And it died over here. I think that's partially because the anime just disappeared. I don't know what happened to that. I don't know why it got canceled. I just think that like Battle Spirits struggled to find an audience outside of Japan because it doesn't have like a base that knows even what the hell it is. I think with the other list of games that Bandai has, as long as they're able to stay within IP that are known, I think we'll be okay. Right? Like I don't think Digimon will go anywhere anytime soon, just because of the success of the IP, but also like I feel like there's a Digimon resurgence lately between the game that got announced, the fact that like Digimon Con is a thing, all this stuff around Digimon has been pretty crazy over the past like 5 years. If anything, of the games that I wouldn't be surprised if they let go of, it would be Masters. I don't think that they will, but like if there was a game that they had to let go of, that would be the one that I wouldn't be as surprised about, because it's older. It doesn't have support in Japan. Like it's its own unique body of whatever for them, right? So it wouldn't surprise me. I hope they don't though, at all.
It's weird too, because you guys only have like one more announced set for the year, right? Like September currently.
Yeah, and I really think it's yeah. That's the only one that we know of. there's been some stuff that is interesting, like leak stuff, um, that looks interesting, that could be good for the game. It looks like we'll just slow down in the amount of sets we get per year, and it will be like 3 sets instead of 4, I think is what we were on before. Which I think is fine. I mean, I think for Masters, so long as the sets are continue to be diverse, like this last set, History of Z, and can kind of like give you enough to work with for 3 months, it will be, or 4 months, whatever it is, it will be fine. It just depends on how good those sets. Like, you can't have a bad set if you're gonna reduce the amount of product coming out, because then you're just gonna have a game that's dead for however long, you know, or quiet. Maybe not dead. We'll say quiet for an extended period of time.
And to add on to that, Frolly too. So the next thing that was announced is, so we have set 28 that's announced for, like you said, I think it's September or something like that. But set 28 is supposed to be the start of a new block. So the Zenkai block is coming to an end. I think with this most recent set.
Yeah.
So we have set 28 will be the start of a new block. So again, I'm a huge Masters player, so I'm trying to remain optimistic because I don't want the game to go nowhere, right? So what I'm thinking is set 28 announcing a new block. I can't imagine that they're like, hey, we're going to do this new block. Again, leaks are always, fickle. You don't know, but for what from what has been leaked and out there, it's like I'd have to imagine that with all of this stuff surrounding it, I don't see the game going anywhere, at least for a little while. Like if a block is announced, I have to think that they don't have just one set planned for it already. Like that's it, right? Like they probably have several sets at least lined up. After that, who knows, right? But yeah, and of course you always have the lingering thing out there of like, well, they have Fusion World. It's like, yeah, but at this point, Fusion World and Masters, in my opinion, play fairly different. I understand that like, in terms of mechanically, the games are the same because you charge energy, you draw the same, those kind of things. But the games realistically play they play differently. It does feel like you're playing kind of two different games in that sense. So I don't feel like Fusion World could be looked at as like, oh, it's a replacement. It's kind of not, in that sense. So I don't know. I think for Masters, I'd agree with Agent on that like, it's simply just because it's older, right? And the fact that it's basically just over here, it would be the easiest one to let go. But yeah, I don't see it happening just because there is still a following, whereas opposed to like BSS, it felt like it was virtually nothing, right? So I don't know. I think Bandai Games are in an okay spot. I think they just struggle from the same problem that it's been. I mean, since I got into Digimon almost 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago at this point, it's like I feel like they just try to do too much. I think that's the issue that they have. Sometimes it works, and that's good. And sometimes it's like, whoa, like I think you guys are spread a little too thin. So, I just feel like it's, we're career Bandai players at this point. We understand the roller coaster. So I think we just, we understand that. So we can weather that and ride it out. Whereas like you have newer players that, and I understandably so, like have like the trepidation of like Frolly was saying, like, is this a good investment to get into? Because you don't know, you haven't been, those kind of things. And it is on the outside looking in, it could look a little intimidating of like, man, if I get into this, what happens if it, they just nixed BSS? It's like, but you got to understand what that means, right? So.
You're seeing the promise of announcements for these future sets as more of a commitment to its long-standing player base instead of a sunsetting. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's I could definitely see that. And like, Masters is the longest-running Bandai card game, I don't know, ever.
Here,
because I don't know the ones that are like Japan only. Yeah. So that's really cool. So I could also see them trying to like not burn bridges with that. And while keeping stuff updated as long as they continue to support it. And if they announce something large, the idea is that like hopefully I'm already playing this and it'll be nice that I don't have to come back month after month. This almost might become like a relief game where it's like, hey, I like this game and I love playing it, but I play a bunch of other stuff. But what's nice is as 3 sets for Magic have come out, 1 set for Dragon Ball has come out, and I bought and built some stuff out of that.
Yeah, and I think with Masters too, the only way that goes away, like completely, aside from like, oh, it's old, so we axed it, is if something happens to Dragon Ball, right? If like Dragon Ball as a collective IP, something traumatic happens, which I don't see, because again, Dragon Ball is in another Renaissance period because of Daima, and that insanity in a good way. And then you see with Fusion World, they're actually doing crossovers with Dragon Ball Legends, which is a mobile game, which is it's okay. But with Dragon Ball Legends and with Dokkan Battle, they have like artwork that they lifted from the cards that you can actually get physically. So like they're trying a lot of things, and I think it's only a matter of time before Masters probably imports some more of those like collaborative efforts. But also I think with Masters, it's also a place that they're enjoying experimenting with their card design, because I've noticed when you look at some of the designs on even Digimon, like the alt arts and the way that they've been patterned, I'm like, oh, y'all just took this from Masters, which is great. But I feel like Masters is like their test bed for a lot of like, how can we mess with our foiling? How can we do the gold plating on our cards that like we didn't do before? So that's also really interesting. I think that's one way that Masters gets to kind of like stick around.
Yeah, Fusion World actually seems like a spin-off of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Yu-Gi-Oh! Speed Duels and like Rush Duels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Fusion World feels more like that, where it's like, I like Dragon Ball, but I'm not hyper invested in the game that's been running the longest. But I am playing this quick thing that I can like kind of do. It's Dragon Ball flavor, which I like, and I play it where quicker matches, I believe, right?
Yeah, generally matches are quicker because there's no counter system. So the matches can go easier. But yeah, it's kind of like the speed. I didn't even think about that comparison, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. When you said that, I was like, yeah, that's almost exactly what it is. And yeah, to that, it's like, yeah, there's no counter timing, and two, the game again. I always say the game's simpler. The game I don't feel like is simpler or easier necessarily. I feel like there's just not as much confusion with when it comes to certain wordings or rulings or whatever. So like you're not spending a lot of time trying to figure that out. The game does. I will say the game feels like it runs smoother. So games typically run quicker and more fluid and things like that. So yeah, I think that's actually a really good like comparison to say, like if you want to try out Dragon Ball but you don't want to deep dive into what's it now 27 plus sets because of other anniversary stuff, whatever of that, you can just hop into if you like the gameplay, then you can kind of transition into it.
Yeah, it's an interesting place for them to be with these games. And like, one thing they could always do, which I don't think they would for player anger, but they could always, if one of these games died, like, hey, we've made a spin-off set in Union Arena. It will have, recurring volumes every year. So if if Battle Spirits, somebody, my Dragon Ball local was like, what if they took Battle Spirits and made it like a subset in Union Arena and took all those collaboration sets that we never got over here and just made them Union Arena sets? So that'd be really cool. I don't think it will happen, but just because the games are synced between or come out simultaneously with the Japan and the US, but who knows? Maybe they could. That could be cool.
It's like when Vanguard kind of merged their nations, where it's like you had all these 28 tribes you couldn't mix, and then they're like, hey, no one's buying this stuff. What if we like pop them into 5? You can run these guys together. That's how it works, and we can pop out less product. Sometimes like you solve your own problem by creating something else. Like even Pokemon Pocket is so popular right now, right? Yep. And it's like it's very much the card game ish. It's got some mechanics, but stuff is wildly more different, and I can play it on my phone while I'm bored and like crack free packs.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that they could do going forward. I'm waiting for the day that they start experimenting more with like mobile games, or even just desktop stuff. Like having their own official Digimon simulator would be cool with animations and shit. That would be pretty dope. I mean, it's Digimon, like literally digital monsters. So like the idea that like Dragon Ball got a sim first, I'll take it. It's not even for the right game, but like that it got a sim before Digimon still blows my mind.
I mean, the fact that we don't, or like the fact that we still don't even stream our stuff feels like we get stuff that's kind of shafted. Sorry, Dan.
No. That was kind of part of the point that I was going to make. But it's like, I feel like it's like, again, optimistically, it's like at least it's showing their willingness to at least try, right? Like Asia said, it's like out of all the card games you guys literally picked like the one that's but neither here nor there. It's like if that's the case, then we as players want to see more of a commitment to that, because for multiple reasons. Like Frawley said, it's like you have the streaming aspect, right? All of us in here, have dabbled in that, or creating YouTube videos. Obviously, Agents Hughes are doing that and creating gameplays and doing it. It's like there's obviously value in that, right? And I don't see them completely ignoring it. I just feel like I've said before. I think they have a lot of moving parts that those types of things kind of fall by the wayside because it's like, yeah, that's on our list, but that's like way down there. We got other things we're trying to, and it's like, and that's cool, but you also have to understand like where your player base is currently sitting, and that's one of those things where like unless you're a player, you can't really jump into that mindset and understand like this is what we're looking for. So
I mean, not to fully segue on that, but like we're talking about games as an investment and being able to like, what do I purchase and is my money going to the right place? Like, are card games getting to a point where it's really hard to be invested in multiple with the price raise?
Yeah.
Dan, unless you want to jump in there first.
No, I was literally just gonna say that because that's kind of what's the only thing, honestly, that's kind of somewhat staving me off of Digimon is we have the DCGO client, which is a great tool for us as players to have. So again, just thinking, let me try this out. So I get back in there, and I'm obviously very rusty, so like it's rough going for me. But it's like this is a perfect lead in to be like, if I do want to actually purchase physical cards, go to actual locals, go to event, and like actually pump time, money, and resources into it, why not have a digital client that allows you to do that? And it's like, because you're not really losing anything, in my opinion. You're not really losing anything as a company, because it's like, if me as a player, right, I'm thinking of a business sense, it's like if I wasn't going to play it anyways, having a client is not going to like lose me anything. However, it could be the potential of gaining a player, because if I wasn't going to play, but then you provide me a client and I try it out, oh, I actually do like this game, now you just gain an extra, a new player base. So I that's what I'm saying. I think from a business perspective, I think that it's definitely it's got to be being considered. But yeah, I just don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't. I don't have a logical explanation as to why they don't. But yeah, like I'm sure we're going to be alluding to now. It's like with imminent price hikes in a lot of these games, that's going to become so much more like essential for players, because of the fact that if games are going to get more expensive or more pricey, it's like players are really going to have to make those decisions on, am I really going to stay in, or do I even want to bother trying this game out, because they just get warded off by the prices. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so my initial thought too is like, okay, so I think everything by September, to my knowledge, is going to go up to like $6 a pack US. So y'all do your conversions and you figure out your boxes from there. Because I think at MSRP over here, you're looking at $144 a box, I think is the math that we came at when I was at my local Thursday. It was like $144 US a box. So I think that makes it means a couple of things. Your singles market is going to be more important for players that are playing on, I don't even want to say on a budget. Your singles market is going to become more important, and trading, I think actual trading is going to become much more important. I think that like the difficulty you're going to have is, regardless, it's going to be more money. We don't need to get into the world economy and all that, because that's a whole other conversation. But like, I think it's going to be very difficult to play a bunch of games with the prices of things going up. I think you're going to have to focus down on, maybe one or two, or be more proactive about selling stuff that you have. So I know I'm bad about that since I've moved, but like Dan and I have talked about, actually, you know what? I'm going to grab this right over here because it's right next to me. I still have my God Rare that I pulled forever ago that I never sold, but like I went and was looking on TCG Player, a lot of the DBS Master stuff, and I have stuff that like I didn't know was going for like $200, and I have like multiple copies of them, right? Like I think that it's gonna be, you're gonna see the value of cards go up that may not have had any value originally. Dragon Ball Masters right now is the perfect example of that, where if you bought a lot of products, then you can probably sell it and reinvest it or do whatever you want with it. Yeah, I think everybody's gonna have to become a little more not business savvy, but like really start selling stuff, like actually start peddling some of these cards so that they can make it a self-sustaining hobby. Because I think it's a little easier to do that now. You just have to like take the time to do it, which is kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest with you.
I mean, it's an interesting idea, right? Like, I think they want to feel on a level of legitimacy like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon or like Magic markets are kind of at, where it's like, Dragon Ball tapers with that. We're in the top stuff for TCG Player, and like we have cards that can go for astronomical amounts. So it does feel like they're doing a good thing of drawing in a lot of players, but it sucks to be like trying to be really going for new players with this thinking of the world, and then also being like, but also more. I mean, I get it. Printing time must be insane now. Everyone is busy all the time. I feel like TCGs are flying off the shelves and so popular right now. I feel like, especially like I said earlier, we're full into cardboard season. Stuff is just going to be releasing, so everyone's competing with each other. But I mean, I get the hike. I've seen stuff slowly going up. I do hope this doesn't just drive people out of it. Like, it feels like a box's content has really got to be worth it now.
Yes.
Because like you can't build a deck out of one box. You could probably trade a fair amount of it and get close, but like, or if you go to your pre-release days or like our community, we all crack on opening day. So it's usually like fair game of just like, hey man, like I'm for this, I'm going for this. Like, I opened a couple boxes, like this is what I'm going for, and people like figure it out. But I feel like, especially yes, like you're saying with having to sell yourself, like I feel like I'm fairly proactive, but I take like stints, or like you hold off on some stuff to see if it goes up. But yeah, being more market savvy is unfortunately also going to be a thing. Tell your friends if they got, you know, rares that are worth something, right? So yeah, it feels like a move to be like more legitimate, or like, hey, we're here, like One Piece is fourth, like are we getting in yet? And it's like, everyone's way too new, man. No one's getting in yet.
Yeah, I know that's I'm terrible with that, and for all you said it best. Like, I go through my stints as well. Like I'll have like this like day where I'll do like this like spring cleaning, go through all my cards, my binder, and you know, over here it's like, and I'll put like 200 cards on online to like sell and all that. Go through and boom, it'd be great. You know, for the, you know, I'll get those payouts. It looks great, but then I'll have like 4 months of like, I just, you know, neglect it and I don't whatever. And in that time period, I probably miss a fair amount of like things that are still just sitting there that I didn't think about or wasn't, you know, whatever. I came across I have a playset of SPRs at a deck that I haven't played in months that got bought out, and they're going, you know, for a decent amount per copy. And I'm like, well, shoot, I just throw it on there. Like, I, you know, didn't really think of that. So I think, and I'll say this too, if you obviously have to be in some of these discords to do that, but there's a discord that I'm in that the reason I found out about it was because there's like a market channel in there, not for you to sell anything, but it goes through and says, hey, these top 5 cards are got the biggest price changes, these, you know. So I kind of keep an eye on that, and I just saw this name and I'm like, wait a minute, I have 4 of those, like, and I look it up and sure enough, it's sitting there and it just right through the roof, and I'm like, shoot, let me get them on there. So yeah, I think to your guys' point, you're absolutely right. I think it is going to take just a little bit more of yeah, like you said, business savvy, but also I think it's just more of God, I can't think of the word, like initiative to like, you know, stay on top of it, right? So because that's really all it is like just kind of keeping current, and it is it's a pain, and it is time consuming or whatever, but if you can do it and stay on top of it, you can really, I mean, like you said, turn this into just self-sustaining, and just turn the cards that you're not playing, decks that you haven't, you know, whatever, into stuff that you can, and then that cycle just repeats itself, you know. So it beats the crap out of, you know, well, I'll just pay out of pocket for it. Well, eventually you're not going to be able to do that, I think. I personally, I've been very fortunate that I feel like I have the adult problem of like, I want something, I can just go get it now, but I feel like that eventually is going to have to, you know, subside as well, because, you know, this stuff is going to get pretty pricey. You know, the reason why our singles market for a lot of these games up until this point have been so good is because product could just be cracked. I mean, you could go get a Dragon Ball box for $50, like there was no problem, $50-$60. Cases, you know, weren't that, you know, for the amount of stuff that you get in them wasn't bad. So you have the market being flooded with commons, uncommons, rares, SRs. Like, I mean, you could get 50-cent SRs, just boom, you know, your decks are done. I don't think it'll be that easy anymore. I don't think SRs are going to go through the roof, but you're not getting a playset for $2 anymore, I don't think. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the overall market is by the end of the year. I think even though it's going to be around fall time, I think it's going to take, you know, through the end of the year. I'd be curious to see by the end of this year what the secondary market's going to look like for a lot of like Bandai games in general.
Yeah, no, I think like, you know, the prices of things going up, like Bandai and other companies in general, like everybody, needs to make sure the cards that are in the boxes are worth your time. Like, they gotta be good as hell in terms of like competitive play. They gotta look good. Like, everything has to be kicked up a notch. And I don't know. I kind of feel like Bandai has started to do that ahead of this price hike, right? Like, I feel like specifically looking at Digimon, this set and even EX08 have been pretty cool. Especially this one for me. It's the set that officially got me back into playing this game. And then when you look at Dragon Ball, this latest set has been really cool because it's really been like a nice mix of decks and playstyles, and a little bit of everything for everybody. Now, I say this as someone who's literally only buying singles. I bought 2 boxes because I felt like I had to at the store, but I'm very excited for like the actual gameplay going forward and kind of investing in that. So I don't know. I think that as long as Bandai is really able to serve good gameplay and beautiful ass cards, the price will be worth it. It just depends on them. I've been seeing some things about Digimon that have made me kind of scratch my head. And I mean, you've been playing much more actively than me, but as in Frawley, because I guess people are kind of feeling like it's getting not like Yu-Gi-Oh, but like where games are kind of like, oh, I just suddenly lost. I didn't get to do anything. But with like the Velgramon and the what's the other? The Talmon loop that's on the horizon. I've been seeing a lot of complaining is the wrong word, but like flags about that.
It's weird too because I feel like it is a really annoying, especially Talmon loop. Like the first time you get hit by it. It is one of these Mega Zoo decks though that kind of does have to try to float a lot of mana first to like doing it. But it gets to do its thing. But the give back memory, or like it's an interesting strat and it kind of works. But I've even seen like a bunch of decks are like now pivoting away from it and just running pure Sakuya, with like Valder Arm from this set as the top end, because you can get level 6 stacks. I can't remember the direct interaction, but the amount of level 6s you have allows you to do multiple targets instead. So I do feel like, I mean, Velgramon, people don't like mill, but then they put in an anti-mill card for the most part. Purple Hybrid is just such an interesting deck, honestly. It's so annoying, and I get why people are annoyed with it. And I think it's going to get hit in March or April or whatever our next ban list is. So, I mean, I expect them to get at least like a fairly decent hit. But I don't know. I do feel like decks are... I feel like we're in much more of a rock, paper, scissors format, though. Like, I still feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! Boils down to like 2 to 3 engines, 2 to 3 decks, and usually it's like 3 different like main decks and then 1 engine that everyone's running. Feels like for Yu-Gi-Oh, where it's like Dynamon doesn't feel phenomenal, but Pyramidi actually like kind of has some stuff, and the meta's just in a weird spot where like I do feel like matchups are weird, but we've always had these one-shot decks. Like Royal Knights is a one-shot deck, and 7 Great Demon Lords is a one-shot deck. So. And they're built that way, on purpose even. I feel like the new Imperial Dramon's going to cause people some anger. That card feels really good, just out the box. Even just reading it a couple times, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do about that. So there's that, but we're in like full like main set territory now too. So things are going to move away from it. There's going to be a couple decks that survive an EX set. That's just kind of how it is. And ban lists to come soon, so I'm sure there'll be a big meta switch-up change, hopefully soon anyway.
This could be a misguided take, so I'll preface this by saying that, because I haven't been in the game, like, for a while. But I feel like, from what you guys are saying, and from my history in the game, this is the life cycle of this game. And you could say this about a lot of games, right? Like Farley was saying, there's always one-shot decks, there's always loop decks, there's always mill decks, there's always, I don't know if there's a security control deck specifically, but Secon has always been a thing. Sure. Yeah, so it's like that's just gonna be the lifespan of this game, right? Some decks are gonna pop to the top. I mean, this is showing my age here, but Bloom Lord, right? And like Grandis Kawagamon, like those days for me, it was like, oh my god, like I wish I could miss this. But then the very next one, or the time before, whatever, you got Lilith Loop, and then you have this other stuff. It's like these types of things are going to come and go, and I feel like the the musings, if you will. I don't want to say complaining, but the musings from like the grand player base is literally just because it's like, we don't like this type of deck, and this type of deck is like up here right now. But then you kind of go through the waves, and even before next set drops or ban lists or whatever, people kind of shift away from it because you have you have players that are like, okay, well, if this is going to be that, I'm going to try to play this. And it's just this, like, it's almost like this really beautiful dance of like, the people are playing this, so I'm going to counter it with that. And then they're going to play the, so like, you kind of have this, and that's where meta comes in, right? And that's why it's always changing. You can't just go in usually with the same deck and be like, I'm going to play this for 6 months and it's always going to be, because it's not like that. So I think it's always been with Digimon, because it was like that when I was playing. It seems like it's still like it now, and Digimon's been around for damn near almost 5 years now. So it's I think in that sense, it's like Bandai knows this, and they know that this kind of ebb and flow is their game. For this one specifically, I won't, but like for Digimon specifically, and that's why for me it's like, I would never say that I'll never get back into the game. Right now I'm just playing other games too deeply that like I just can't focus on it. But like, who knows? Like this game goes through these phases that it's like, it's so easy to just hop right back into it, because it's gonna feel like it did when I played. Just new decks, new mechanics, sure, all that. Like, I know the game evolves, right? But in terms of like Farley was saying, the environment of the ecosystem of the game, this is how it's been. It's how it will be. They just change up, specifics.
Thinking about the comparison of Yu-Gi-Oh has made some clicks for me, where it's like, I do agree that it's kind of like archetypal though. Gallantmon gets some stuff, and like Imperialdramon has a good base, so like it does kind of do that archetype thing where it's like, these are the archetypes, and every time they get like kind of support, they get to do something different and new. So I guess Yu-Gi-Oh, it could be like a closer comparison, but I don't feel like it's that bad. Yeah,
yeah.
No, I will say
like, oh no, go ahead, Dan.
No, I might be saying the exact same thing you're about to say. I've never played Yu-Gi-Oh. I have friends that have, and I know Asia's talked to me a little bit about it, but like, I feel like with Yu-Gi-Oh, it's one of those that from what I've seen, it's like, if you go first and you draw all the hand traps and all that, like, I'm literally not playing the game. Digimon doesn't feel like I can never play the game. There are times where like the game will start going and it'll start getting one-sided, but that happens in all games, right? If my opponent sets up and I don't, but I don't feel like I ever get to a point for most of the time that I never get to play the game. There's just times where it's like, dang, they counter me with this, or I hit this in security, now I got to start over again, which is annoying. But I don't necessarily feel like, in my opinion, I don't feel like it's so bad like where like Yu-Gi-Oh, where a lot of people, like, there's more complaining coming out of that camp than I feel like over here. So
yes, that's what I was gonna say. Was that?
Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. No, you're 100% right. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh is like, man, if I don't get the nuts, get like what my deck is supposed to do, or if I can't break your board right now, I will lose. Like, it doesn't, nothing for the most part, in Digimon locks you out of playing, except for, quite honestly, Shining Greymon Ruin Mode loop, where it's like, oh, if I play anything that's not 10k or above 10k, it's just gonna die. Oh, you have Medieval Gallantmon out? Cool, I can't play any. The first thing I play is just gonna die, right? like that. But like, to me, it's like, okay, but like, that's much more doable. Like, there's no guarantee I'm gonna lose this turn. It's just that this turn is probably scuffed. I'm sure that there are ways and experiences that people have had where, like, yeah, I legitimately did get to play the game though, because they played their Medieval Gallant and then they did the whole loop and I couldn't do anything. And I mean, that is what it is. I think at that point, you kind of just, it is what it is. I think with Digimon, it's much harder to be that consistent. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh, decks are built to be so consistent, and that's that point to be like, no, I'm going to win my turn 2 or 3, whatever it is. Like, I'm going to lock you out. Digimon, I feel like there's enough variance between security and between I just didn't see the stuff I needed to be able to draw, to be able to do stuff, that it kind of prevents every game from being the exact same, even if, you have the most optimized deck, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, like even Chimera Loop, like it's just a meme, but like a true infinite loop does scare me with some card games. So I do get trepidations, but like also I feel like we were asking for this. Remember when you said you didn't want cards banned or hit early because like people had broke them and you wanted to be sync? Welcome to new meta. Welcome to someone figured out something real dumb. other cards better come out. You better adapt. Like it's messed up. But like I totally get that. Like thank God we have like some crazy new level 7 aces where it's like I can play this unless they get to do like ruin where they like get the 2 where it's like okay 15. Like then yeah, like it's true you are locked out. But we kind of asked for this. Like we wanted to be breaking the cards ourselves. We wanted the meta, so we're gonna have to stick with it for a bit and like or figure it out a way around it.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for. I mean, it's what me and Dan have always experienced with Masters. There's nobody telling you, oh, these are the decks that are gonna be good. You're kind of like going off of content creator perceptions, your own perceptions. That's one of my favorite things about Dragon Ball Masters is like the court of public opinion is so much more important than it is in Digimon, in the sense that in Masters, there's plenty of people in my Discord where we have, I wouldn't even call them debates, but like, if you look in our Dragon Ball chat when it comes to deck building, oh my god, there are so many different opinions, and it's really hard to when I say validate them, I mean like it's really hard to tell somebody, nah, there's no, like that's bullshit, that's like not even gonna work. With Digimon, you can at least say, no, with these results over here, you can really kind of like shift how people think about stuff in that way. With Dragon Ball Masters, I feel like no, there's a lot of like personal variance. There's clearly stuff that you shouldn't play because it's like not relevant, like, and we all know this, but like when it comes to deck building philosophy and like play philosophy in that game, it's so much different when you have to be on the ground, and by the time you figure it out, hey, there's a new set. So all that's changed, which I love that about that game.
And you can fact, well, not say fact check, but you maybe go back off of this one. I feel like why that's the case is because with Digimon, that game is so much more reliant on consistency and optimal deck building because of that, right? Like you get your little searches and stuff like that, and I understand like Dragon Ball doesn't technically have like no, actually it does because I have decks that do it, but like decks where you can actually search the deck and like you were saying, as opposed to something like Yu-Gi-Oh or like I play Pokemon and Pokemon has search mechanics and things like that, right? Digimon doesn't have that, so you have to play optimal things. So there is like Agent was saying, there is a valid collective opinion, if you will, if you want to call it an opinion rather than fact, of no, you really shouldn't run that in there because even if it comes up, it's not actually advancing your board state. Whereas in Dragon Ball, it's kind of like, if it works for you, man, go for it, because like even between him and I, there's, he's got his like pet deck of SS4 Vegito that's a really good deck, runs really consistently, really smoothly, and he runs these like crazy techs in it that just like if I ran them don't work for me, but they work for him. So it's like I feel like with I'm not saying that Digimon doesn't have deck building variants because it does clearly, but I feel like with a game like Masters, you can get away with it because if these things come up, you can still use them. But yeah, I think in Digimon it's so important that if you don't see your pieces, then and your opponent does, yeah, you're going to probably get rolled. So
yeah. Go ahead.
I've been thinking about it with Magic recently, with like how important it is to run removal index. Mm-hmm. How important, like we fall into these consistency machines, and then it's like, hey man, what happens if I check your security? What's the biggest thing in there? I don't know, 15. Cool, I'm 28. You really should be running bombs. Like, there's a whole philosophy to like, no, my deck is so consistent. It's like, you really should run a bomb or two, like just in case. What's your plan B though? So I can see that too. I like the personal flair and stuff is really cool. That's why I like about like Commander of like so many unique cards in a deck. Versus like Digimon's fun, but Digimon is an engine builder. And my engine does the thing or it doesn't do the thing. But I feel like you're boiling everything down to simple binary. It's the enjoyment of the back and forth and the doing it all.
Yeah, it's interesting too when I think about like, when I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Heavy, what I loved about that game was that you could take like a rogue engine, throw it in the deck, and it just completely F up everything that your opponent wants to do. And I feel like it's harder. It's doable in Digimon, but it's not really an engine. It's like, let me throw in like 3 cards that you may not expect. Like in my Examon deck, it was Takumi Aiba because, hey, let's make you swing, and it's my turn again between Takumi and Ice Wall. Guess what? Thank you. I'll take this turn. Or Kaiser Nail, right? Where it's like, cool, I'm gonna play the Kaiser Nail, prepare, here's a second Examon, and now you have to deal with 2 big X's. Have fun. And Gigadeath was the other one of like, oh, cool, I'm just gonna get rid of this whole board because I don't want to deal with this. And I feel like with Digimon now, at least the deck list, because I still kind of like look at other people's deck lists because I'm kind of getting back into the game to kind of get a sense of what the deck is supposed to do. I'm like, damn, there's so much engine stuff that I feel like I have to have that there's so little room for me to really like plug and play. I think the perfect example is Oryuken, because I was looking at lists for this and I'm like, damn, this thing it's cool, but because you have to run 2 different sets of rookies and in level 4s and 6s, it makes it so that you feel like there's a specific deck I'm supposed to build, and maybe if I'm lucky, I get a max of like 10 flex spots per deck. And that's like by flex spots, I mean like that's your tamers, your options. And that's kind of it. And I like that, but I partially hate it. Not enough to not play the game, obviously, but it is kind of like, it makes the deck building interesting. But kind of like we were saying before, I think with the global sync, it's going to get a lot better at least, because now when you do a tech, you might legitimately be the only person who ever thought of doing this. And like the idea is for the most part, all your own, right? Or maybe it's you and your teams, whatever. I feel like there's more of an emphasis on workshopping those ideas now than before.
My thing too with popularity is like a personal story. Is like I always go back to think about like our only band card. We have one band card in the entire game, Mega Digimon Fusion. People weren't there for those times. You would have heard nightmare stories of people who were there if the amount of people who were playing today were playing then. So like I feel like stuff always plagues things, and like it's easy to forget when we were just like, there's 10 cards to my engine and I'm gonna put the rest together myself. I do agree though, I miss like very simple ratios when you were not really running super consistency pieces. Felt like you had more flexible spots for spells you liked or things that you perceived as like just gonna hopefully come up and do stuff with. Feels like it's less personal, it's more engine, which is why I find like there's decks I'm building now where I'm like, oh, this does one thing and does it really well. But if I enjoy it, I enjoy it. Like Dynamon is funny, but I'm like, this thing does one thing and that's what it does. It do the one thing. So I've been finding myself like playing Purple Hybrid where I'm like, there's more of a line, there's more thinking, there's more doing stuff.
Yeah. More engagement.
Well, I think on the deck building spot, like if you're looking at the comparison, like since like Digimon and Master specifically, that's what we're talking about. I think with Digimon, the problem that's running into it isn't that, because I don't want to come across as like Digimon doesn't have a unique deck building system. I think Digimon is plagued by the problem that, like Frolly, you were saying, like you have Imperial Digimon, right? I've been playing Imperial Digimon since BT8, right? Where so the thing is, and those cards are still like statistically good, right? So it's hard to make an argument not to play them. But then I also have to play 5, 6, however many more sets worth of Imperial Digimon stuff that has come out since then. You feel like you have to jam it all in. So to Agent's point, it's like with Oryuken, there's old Alphamon stuff that is still worth running, or like Examon, there's old Examon stuff that's still worth running, that it's hard to make the decision of what do I maintain as my engine of like all of this stuff, because I have to run 39, 42 cards worth of engine. My spots are a lot less. Whereas like with master sets, Dragon Ball Masters, your engine usually, in my cases anyways, usually only takes up about 30 or so slots. Even if a minimum of 50 card deck, you can run a little bit more. But let's say 50. That's a good 2/3 of the deck that I can kind of be free with. That's a lot of space. So you don't really know like, oh, I'm running against this ABC deck, whatever. I know that what's probably in here because they're staples, but after that, dude, I have no idea. But if I'm going up against an Examon, it's like, unless you want to get real spicy, I probably know 85 to 90% of what you're running because you have to. So I don't think it's plagued by the game doesn't have unique deck building. I think it's just they put themselves in a position where they have so much stuff available for certain, like Frolly was saying, these archetypal things that you have to run them. Otherwise, the deck just doesn't function optimally, I think.
What's interesting, and Frawley, we talked about this as a collective and then offline as well, is I think with BT21 they might finally be addressing this in the sense that if you look at the cards they've been releasing, like they're so archetypal, but they're like random ass colors. So you have like they have like the hero archetype, which is its own thing. Then it's like, oh, this is literally all the protagonists across these series that I can now go from like Agumon into like Shoutmon, whatever his level 4 version may be, into like Gallant, into like War Growlmon. Like it's like this really weird sort of like, oh, I can mix and match series and it works because they have the keyword they're looking for, which in this case is hero. And then adventure its own thing. So you can really say, hey, this is my level 3. Guess what the rest of my deck is, you know? So like that's kind of cool. And I hope that they kind of keep doing that to where like there is more variance, because then even older cards that are just color like relevant, right? Like it's like, okay, I have this hero bottom end, but actually my level 6 is some random shit that you would never think of, and then I can jog rest them together into this level 7 because they hit the color requirement. Like I think that is where I would love to see the game get to, just because, especially when there's no buddy kind of showing you the way, like in Japan, like we're all figuring out at once. You could really mix and match some cool shit, and that's what I'm hoping we get from BT21 and beyond.
It feels like they always wanted this game to be like their RPGs, where you don't take the intended line. Sometimes you got to go up this weird other line and become a different dude. And they wanted the card game to be like that, but then they were like, hey, well, you like running Devimon, so let's make stuff that's specific to Devimon. And they've done that so much that he's his own deck, and he has like enough pieces to be an engine, or pieces of multiple other engines or enablers, essentially. So that would be cool with like how Adventure is going to be the protagonist. So you can like basically go from, you know, any of the 8 kids Digimon on top of each other, which is cool, because like you're gonna be like Tentamon, and they're like, that's weird, okay, cool. And it's like Gatomon, and you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. And like you'll be able to do these bop arounds, which is cool, but you're just making wider archetypes.
Yeah.
But like, oh, I thought they already should have been embracing this more with like, not I don't have another word besides type, but like vaccine, virus, and like free. Like these things have come up as like searchable targets and stuff, and they benefit you from like inheritables, but like I don't know, we haven't really leaned into that or done anything else to be like, well, why wouldn't I run card that is all engine? It's like, well, what if there's a couple other things that are unique and you can like really just mix and match more? They want to be like less kindred or focused.
Yes, as one of the last decks that I played before I kind of stepped away a little bit was Yellow Vaccine, and one of the things I liked about it was you could be a little bit more free with it, because it just based off the vaccine type, but there was a definitive like this 35 to 38 cards, you had to run them, like, because they're just so definitively good, right? Agent was talking about one of the decks that I actually considered about getting back into the game with, because it's a lot of fun. It's Royal Knights. There's been so many more Royal Knights since what was it, BT13 that the versus Royal Knights that came out originally, that are so good to run that it's like you're kind of locked into, you know, a lot of people, at least back then, were running, you know, the different sister mons and stuff, because those kind of played, you know, so of course, so mecha mons and things like that. But again, so what I think, this is what I was going to try to get to, was I feel like the skill aspect of this game isn't so heavily, I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like it's so heavily leaning into deck building, because there is this kind of standard template for the most part. Like I said, you can get a little spicy and you could do things depending on these deck builds up until now anyways. I feel like the skill level that I've always seen with this game is how good are you working with what you have available to you in any given game, right? Because of the fact that like that this is what you have, you know, this is what you're drawing and yeah, sequencing and all of those kind of things, and board state, right? Because Digimon is in its own arena of like this interactive between players, where it's that memory system, as opposed to I build up my energy, you build up your energy, you do what you want with it. Like there's no real interaction there in terms of that. Whereas, you know, the memory system with Digimon is very, very unique. So I think that is, of course, it's always been their kind of shtick with this game. But yeah, to your guys' point, I haven't been super relevant on these new archetypes. But if they're going kind of that route, it kind of seems that they've identified like, oh, maybe we do need to kind of widen the deck building archetypes, if you will, so that way it doesn't feel like players are so locked into, if I want to run a vaccine, I kind of have to run these X amount of cards. If I want to run Jessmon, I don't I can kind of mess around with this a little bit because it's not specifically just only these,
I will tell you for a fact, if Agent could run any red deck, it had starter deck Greymon in it for forever, and I do not blame him for that.
Yeah,
because that was the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
Because you were playing red, and you should Digivolve into that dude.
Yep.
If you do more generic staple stuff like that too, I feel like we can kind of get back to that. It's like this is why we still run Floodgates, where it's like, well, I can put Psychmon down, and if I put Psychmon down, well, now you can't reduce your play cost. And I was like, okay, well, that really sucks for me. It's like, yep. You only really see that because they're still good. Gazimon, like these things from like really early sets. You still see because they have that flavor of like, oh, I'm playing this color, or it was splashable enough where I can pay 3 memory for something. I mean, I think that's the ideal state. But I do see them kind of leaning into that a little bit. Like the decks I feel like I enjoy playing the most have been like Gamamon and Pulsemon, where I have so much variety to choose from like a middle. Like my top end was almost always this, but it had like, it didn't have to be, but like it was cool that a lot of these things interacted with each other, and I had different lines with more toolbox, and like being able to put more tools in your toolbox because you like them. Mm-hmm. I would do that all the time. I always ran Fireball for a draw spell. I just wanted cards, man. Like sometimes like you see this more in other card games, and you don't see it as much and stuff with Digimon, unless the deck is, like Dan was saying, uniquely focusedly built, like a loop deck or a infinite turn kind of infinite attack kind of deck. You always have these weird things that you could do because of stuff, unless they get hit, which could be interesting, especially if like 0 cost spells or C is like a problem. They have been popping up in a couple decks.
Yeah, and I think going back to what you were saying too, Dan, I think the other thing where Digimon's skill accelerates is important is your micro decisions. I feel like Digimon is such a micro decision game. Like you're like, do I swing with my rookie first into security, or do I just swing with my level 6? Because if I swing with one or the other, depending upon what I hit, the other's going to potentially die, right? And like we can't even count the amount of times where any of us, the 3 of us, have had games where we swung with one Digimon, and if we had swung with the other Digimon first, we would not have gotten screwed over in the way that we did. And it's infinitely frustrating, but also like, at least for me, I try not to put that on, oh, that's luck. I'm like, no, like I know what the correct answer was. I know on some level I should have done this other thing, but I didn't make that decision. And that's entirely on me. And I feel like with Digimon, it's such a, it's a game that requires a lot of self-control. And what I mean by that is like really knowing yourself when you go into a match, and like the kind of decisions that you will or won't make. And whether they're like the right decisions for like that opponent or like that deck that you're playing against. Whereas I feel like with Dragon Ball, not to keep going back to Masters, what I love about Masters is that it's all of that at the same time. But that's also what I think makes that game so freaking difficult for people, is because like I feel like there are some people who mastered one element, like they're really good at that element, but they struggle with the other ones, right? Like you might be a great micro decision person, but you struggle with deck building, or you might be a great deck builder, but like you also don't have the card knowledge that you need of like, oh, what are my opponent's outs to this situation, right? Or how do I like pilot my turns so that this goes the best possible way for me? I feel like that is one of the most interesting thing about Bandai games across their games, is each one I feel like has a different ebb and flow across those key, elements of what makes a game good, right? Like obviously the game mechanics, obviously deck building, and then like decision trees. And I'm curious to see how they continue to evolve with each other, because you can see elements of, oh, they borrowed that from this, they borrowed that from this, and like how they kind of feed off each other. It's the only reason why I've low-key considered playing One Piece super casually, one, because there's just a bunch of people at my job who play it, but two, because I kind of want to like know like, okay, but how is this different than everything else? Like I just kind of want to know like what skills is this game going to ask of me, and is it worth it?
Well, considering it's one of like Frolly was saying, it's Bandai's biggest game, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's so there's obviously in that. So if we're of a player base, again, that's not to say that we guaranteed like the game, but if we are so into Digimon and Masters, Union Arena, all these other Bandai games, and these statistically fall short of what One Piece has amassed, then there's got to be something to it, right? Because I honestly, Agent, I thought the same thing. I'm like, do I just go pick up like a Luffy starter deck and just see like just to figure out like how the game plays? Do I enjoy? That's the same thing I did with Union Arena. I've done with all these games. I just pick up a starter and just do I enjoy just the basic? Because if I can enjoy the basic gameplay, I can only imagine if I ramp this deck up. If I go get a meta relevant deck and go from there. That's the topic we've talked about a couple episodes back. It's like, I do think that, and to that point is like Bandai does this kind of really cool like integration between all their games, that they have similar elements of each other's games, but they do their own kind of unique thing, that going kind of a callback to Frawley's original point of like, he doesn't like using the term spiderweb, but kind of like spiderweb of like of Bandai games. That is kind of how people, I feel like, can easily flow in and out of each game. Right? They're similar enough that you don't feel like you're having to learn a whole new game, but they're different enough that they, like Agent was saying, they do accentuate different elements of things. So you can't just, I'm really good at micro decisions in Digimon, I can handle this game no problem. Well, it's part of it, but maybe this element's a little bit more important. So you have to, so it's this kind of like cool dynamic of like, just competitive TCG in whole. And I think this is one of the like kind of my cherry on top that I was going to say about Bandai games in general. I feel like, you have these other, you have Big Three, you have these other, one-off games, whatever. I think Bandai is what they're trying to do in the TCGs. They are trying to be, at least what it looks like, the one-stop shop for TCGs. They are trying to just have like, we amass the biggest TCG community because we're able to just rotate all of the and do that. So that's just what it seems like on the outside looking in. As a Bandai player, that's what it looks like they're doing.
There's like a weird point to that. I wonder if it's one of those things where it's like, oh hey, my friend plays Magic, I'm gonna get a deck, or my friend plays Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm gonna get a starter deck. But Bandai's just trying to be like, but if they all play Bandai games,
yep,
then you're just getting your homie into one of ours. No, I fully agree. We talked about this a lot last episode where I'm like that, or in previous episodes too, where it's like they feel like they're just building their own network of just like everybody's playing a little bit of each, or like you've dabbled. And you're right, like I've not played One Piece, which is really weird, just because I haven't had the opportunity. But I bet there must be something to it, because Bandai keeps building unique games that share elements, but do all feel entirely different pilot. Which is like, I guess a strength to like their core building or whoever like designed most of these games. Because I haven't, I still haven't touched Gundam, but I've heard like nothing but good things. We finally had like our pre-release around here, and people loved it. So I'm like, man, I gotta try it out sometime when I have the opportunity.
Yeah, man. I don't know. It's an interesting place to be in as someone who is addicted to cardboard. Having so many options to choose from. I was just talking to Dan about this before, and I mentioned this in our last episode. I've officially decided I'm dropping Star Wars, just because rotation just ain't for me. No, thank you. But like, it's interesting that with Bandai stuff, like even when I have thought about dropping it, there's always a reason why I don't. Whether it be the gameplay is too fun, or I've made too many friends playing it. I mean, y'all are a prime example. Playing, this, that, or the third. I don't know. It's an interesting place, and I think to kind of circle this all the way back to the last point, this is why the price hike going up, it's going to be very important for them to continue to establish community and encourage people to want to try other games, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to justify, whatever the new price is, however they land, if it's $144 MSRP a box. I don't know what other games comparatively are, because I don't play them enough. I'd have to look. But like, if you build something that people like, they will pay for it. And as long as you give them reason to come back, they'll come back. I think that will be okay. It's just going to be about, I think at this point, how do you solidify that community and really, really encourage people to start bringing their friends in?
Yeah, no, like, I would say for the most part, Digimon was like one of the cheaper games originally, but at least from what I know about North American distributors, like we've all gone up on everything like a little consistently, which makes sense, right? At first, it's like, are people interested in this? Okay, people are interested, so this goes up. The only nice thing about a price hike is that we know that people are interested, because only people who are actively purchasing it can kind of afford to do so. But as long as they turn that into quality, like we've been applying, like I'm a little bit more okay with it. I like that they're testing and doing weird stuff. Like 13 hits in a case is crazy for like master set collectors. Like I feel bad for you. I do. As someone who needs like a couple key pieces for a collection, like I feel you on that. But at the same time, like getting to the point where like you're holding on stuff because it does go up again, and this having like a little bit more of like, I can buy a box because if I go big, I go real big. Like cards in other games can still fetch for like, I don't know, there's stuff in like every other game where I feel like I'm always like in Digimon, like that's big, but like, man, like I just heard about this in Dragon Ball or like Vanguard, like they pay big money for like crazy hits. So but yeah, like Digimon was on the cheaper. Now I'd say we're like we're above average for price wise, just because like Yu-Gi-Oh still has maintained like just about the $100 mark, because it's always 24 packs versus for. And then like it's harder because like Magic and Pokemon release in the 30s and 36s, so their boxes are like well over $200. But the idea is that you're getting more packs and
you're getting more
more stuff. Yeah. So I think Digimon's in a fine spot, but Bandai is clearly like charging a bit of a premium to be like, hey, like it's costing us money to print this. You're gonna have to pay. I know it seems cheap on the books, but
But if the secondhand market does what continues to do well, which it looks like it is for these games, it makes it get, you as a player, more incentivized to like play in events because people are paying stupid money for your promo cards. Your hits from your boxes, you might pay for your box. You'll probably pay for your pre-release. Shit, when I was at the Dragon Ball pre-release, I basically paid for somebody else's pre-release when I bought the Alter SS4. There's a Vegito off of them, and then somebody else bought something off for me and paid for that, and the those things will kind of like feed themselves if that kind of people see value in it, which clearly they do.
Yeah, I think that's a main way where Bandai can take care of their players in that sense. Where I can't speak too much on Digimon, but I know Dragon Ball specifically. We did the in-person regionals. Now it's been a little while, but I did an online regional not too long ago and got my I was able to get top 64, so I got my participation, but then I got top 64 pricing again, and man, the promos and the alt art set that you get with just the alt art set alone, I sold and I think quadrupled my entry fee to the event, and it's simply because the alt arts that they're printing are not just good arts, but they're alternate versions of good cards, playable cards that people are going after, wanting to max rare decks, things like that. The promos that they send out are really playable promos that go into decks that are relevant. They're not printing, So I think for that sense, if they continue on that kind of trend, which it seems like they have been, there's been new promo sets that have been released for the upcoming events and things like that seem equally as good. It makes it worth playing in these events. So it's like, yeah, I'm putting out a little bit more money to do these certain things, play in events, get the cards to play the events, whatever. But my return on investment is commensurate. So it's not as big of a hit, right? So, but again, going back to that point, we keep circling back to points, but it's like you have to be vigilant on, okay, I got these promos in, I'm not going to use them, I got to offload them, right? Because if they do sit for a while, they could lose value. You don't know what they're going to do. But yeah, so it's like I said, it's this weird dance of like knowing, hey, I'm going to hold on to this, but I can let that go and whatever. So but yeah, I think if Bandai continues to do stuff like that, I don't see it necessarily being a problem. I mean, extenuating factors outside of their their own ecosystem they can't control, right? But for them, I think it's fine.
Cool. Well, guys, we've been at it for just almost an hour and a half. God damn, what is it? Okay, and almost an hour and a half. By the time we edit this down, though, for y'all who are watching, it's probably not gonna be that long. So there's just that. But was there anything else anybody wanted to bring up before we round out for the night?
Honestly, no. I think we nailed a bunch of topics. I think just keeping up on what you are doing, enjoying your hobby, and not letting the other stressors that we talk about here necessarily be the problem. This is a hobby, so do what you can. But it's gonna be, like we said, even more important to buy singles, talk to your locals, and figure out what people are doing or buying or selling or trading, because there is stuff to be done on the cheap. I just hope everyone keeps collecting and is having a good time.
To echo what Frawley says, and I know it's probably a little cliche to say, but it's like the reason you play a card game is to have fun. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I know there's a competitive aspect, and there's these friendship rivalries we all got going on, all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's literally to build community. So focus on that. Focus on those things. We've got some people that we know that do it really well in different games, and get caught up in certain things that maybe don't need to be focused on. It's like, at the end of the day, man, play the stuff you like, hang out with the people that you enjoy spending time with, and those are the main focuses, because like you're going to enjoy the games 10 times more than that. And if you can do that, the games are going to take care of themselves, you know what I mean, by doing that. So yeah, I think we can keep up with that, man. We're set, man. Like Frawley said, we're in the season of cardboard, man. We're chilling.
Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah, no, build community, guys. Have fun. Really appreciate you guys coming through and hanging out with us for the past however long this episode actually is. By the time it's made it through premiere. Yeah, we're back to being able to do stuff monthly. Channel's back to actually putting out content consistently. So hope to see you all across the videos in the comment section. Much love. Peace.